Alrighty, in this lesson we're going to talk about frames. We're going to talk about what a keyframe is. And if you watch the introduction to animation, I introduced that concept. We're going to compare frames to keyframes. We're going to talk about what blank keyframes are. And then we're going to talk about working with frames. So we'll look at selecting, creating them, deleting them, copying them, and if we wanted to reverse them. And then the last thing is all along we'll talk about keyboard shortcuts. So let's go ahead and get started. And up here, I'm going to go ahead and just clear out and make a brand new layer. And so we've got this. So I want to show you we've got a brand new layer. And if we take a closer look here, this guy right here, this is a blank keyframe. And the reason that I can tell it's a blank keyframe is that it's got this rectangle and then it's got the square, and it's an empty square. It's not filled in. And what that means is that basically that there's a frame, so there's something on the time, but there's nothing on the stage. So if I go over here and just click on the oval tool and just put something on the stage, see what happens over here? Right over here, sure enough, we get a change. Now all of a sudden the blank keyframe, the dot, is now filled out and we have a keyframe now. So it's not a blank keyframe, it's actually a keyframe with content in it. Okay, so that is what's known as a keyframe. Now if we wanted this right now, this is one frame, so since our project is 20 frames per second, this is 1/20th of a second. We have an animation with just this black circle that shows up here. If we wanted to continue, if we wanted this to actually stay on the stage for a while through time, if we move forward, let's just say we just click over here to 5. Okay, I'm on frame 5 over here. And then if you go to Insert Timeline and you add a frame, and notice the keyboard shortcut is F5. I want to point out these shortcuts because you'll use them all the time. I never really come up to this dialog box or to this menu by going to Insert Timeline and then Frame. I just hit F5 on my keyboard. Okay, but when you do that, notice what happens here. Now you can see that we have a keyframe that has a duration of 5 frames, and at the very end is something that we haven't seen before. It's this box, this white rectangle, and that indicates the end of a keyframe. So currently we have one keyframe lasting a duration of 5 frames, and then an indication of the end of that frame. Okay. Now if we wanted to, let's say that in our animation, and by the way, this is scrubbing. If we had this black dot and then it was gone, right? Now I'll come out here to the frame right after that ending keyframe and go to Insert, Timeline, and then Blank Keyframe, which is F7. Now notice that it leaves the stage. And we could do the same thing here. If I come out here and I'm going to hit F5 on my keyboard, then what we have is just this keyframe, some frames, then we have a blank keyframe and lasting through time here. Okay, so now let's go ahead and put something on this one. So we've got something different here now. So let's go ahead and just select the rectangle tool and a different color just for fun here. Alright, so now we have something different here. And notice again, as soon as I put something there, now we have a keyframe. So we have a keyframe and then another keyframe. And this black lasts up until 5 frames and then it switches to this green rectangle. If I wanted to change when this happens, if I wanted to move this keyframe over later down the timeline, I can do that by just going to my main selection tool. And then the important thing here is to select and then do something. You have to select and then do something. So by clicking once, I've selected that keyframe, and now when I click and drag the second time, it moves. Now if I just try to click and drag, like here I'm just going to try to click and drag. If I click and drag, that's just selecting. So I could select a certain, all of these, and then I can move the whole thing. Okay? But if I wanted to move just one keyframe, I must first click and then let go. See, I've clicked let go, and that's selected, and then now click and drag, and now I've moved that keyframe. Okay. So now we have this black circle going to the green rectangle, and if I wanted to get rid of some of these frames here, I can click and select some of them, and then again if I go up to insert timeline, I could make blank keyframes here. That's one possibility. So if I do that, notice that now it's just blank keyframes. Okay, I can also go over here and then F5. Remember, F5 was what created these frames. So if you just hit Shift F5, then you remove all of those. Okay, so that's a good keyboard shortcut to remember. Again, F5 adds the frames. Shift F5 removes all the frames. And if I wanted to add a keyframe, it's F6. It doesn't show it up here, but this is F5, F6, F7 here. So if I wanted to now have this green box with another keyframe here, then I would move here, and then I'm going to just go ahead and type F6 on my keyboard. And when I do that, notice that it's now made a keyframe that's exactly like the previous one. Okay, there we go. I'm going to delete that again by holding the Shift F5. Now it's gone. Okay, now if I wanted to take these two keyframes with frames, if I wanted to take them and copy them, if I select all of them and then hold down the Alt or Option key, then click and drag, I'm making a copy. So now I have a copy of that entire thing. This could be useful actually if you have let's say a menu that's going to come down, right, and then the menu goes back up again. So we might want to copy this. So we copy the menu coming down and then the menu coming up, which we'll do right here. And then the last thing is, of course, we need to change it to where, so this has got the black ball and then the rectangle and black ball and the rectangle. But if we were actually to have some menu that would come down and then go back up again, we'd want to reverse these two. So if you control click or right click on this, you can reverse these frames. So we have an option to reverse the frames. And now once I've reversed the frames, you can see that we go from black to the green rectangle, back to the black. Okay, and that is an introduction into working with frames and keyframes.